All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, the London is Blue podcast After Dark, the final preseason from the U.S. match that Chelsea are playing to get ready for the 2024-25 Premier League season. Dan, one of your hosts here alongside Nick. And as always, we are trying to take the most realistic and, dare I say, trying to be optimistic about what we just witnessed. And Chelsea losing 2-1 to Real Madrid to close out on a whimper the U.S. Summer Tour, the third one in a row. And I would dare say definitely one of the weaker performances. I don't know if it beats the drubbing that Arsenal gave us in Orlando, Nick, but this was not a stellar preseason tour for Chelsea in any way, shape, or form.
No, and obviously when we do these lives, the benefit is we get to hear from you. So if you want to throw your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns in the chat, please do that. Producer Jake will find the best of the best and put them up live, as you see here. Look, we're going to get into a lot of it, right? We're going to get into Maresca's system, the progress that was made, different players who have either stood out or faded during preseason and all of it. But I will say it's been rough to watch. I'm all for using preseason to work through the kinks and try and remedy mistakes and make players more comfortable. That's what it's for. And I think objectively, we don't ever take match results as like the Bible coming out of preseason, but one win and one decent performance out of 5 games is not what you were hoping for, I think, probably, and the more on the performance side than anything else. It was just all over the place. It felt chaotic. Chelsea obviously traveled a ton in preseason, coming all the way from San Francisco back to the East Coast. There's now a hurricane that's kind of dissipating out over North Carolina as we speak, and so that just adds more shenanigans to an already travel-filled schedule. So a lot going on here, Dan, obviously, but yeah, let's break it down.
Well, we did get some 3-word match reviews as we kind of jumped into this one here. Again, we're doing this one live on YouTube. So if you're listening back later on the podcast feed, you missed out on the fun shenanigans that were taking place during the live stream. But you had Garland Mason with the Sterling Not Gold as a way to kickstart us off there. You had Matt Fitzgerald with We Can't Defend, which feels like a very accurate assessment of what is going on in this team. And then you had Zach Locklear with Still Not Clicking. All, I think, 3 very good summary match reviews that we had there. Do you have a 3-word match review, Nick, for this one?
Just throwing me on the old spot here, Dan. Mudryk, not magic. That would be mine. It's been tough. It's been tough to watch from a preseason perspective. It probably feels unfair, to be candid. That's probably more me being a jerk, picking out one player from an otherwise, objectively pretty bad performance. But haven't seen enough from the young man.
I think it is going to be jury's still out. And I would say maybe the jury is closer to a decision rather than not. But I think I am still willing to give some level of time, a level of opportunity, because there are still players who are not back in this side, right? Like we have not seen Nico Jackson as a part of this team. We've only seen Moises Caicedo for a 45-minute stint and then about 20 plus minutes here in this match. We haven't necessarily had the opportunity to see Cole Palmer at all. And these are all things that will produce a better result in terms of having better players on the pitch. Where the jury is, I think, very concerned and maybe rightly ready to acquit is just the decision to play this man-marking system with an extremely high line that was very much exposed by a not full force Real Madrid team, right? Like Kylian Mbappe was not there tonight. They didn't need him. They did not need Kylian Mbappe tonight to show that there was a different level between where this Real Madrid team was. And it was the same with the Manchester City game, where they were relative to where this Chelsea team are, both in terms of the player level at the moment, and then also of the system or the manager input level. And so I think maybe that's the perfect place to start. Is now we've seen, I mean, less so about the Real Madrid match, but we've now seen five matches here. We have a pretty good sample size. At least, what should we try to expect with this system? And to be fair, Maresca did have comments within the past 48 hours talking about what his view on preseason was, that may or may not be exactly what our sporting directors or commercial directors would like to hear him say, but that this is not necessarily a true ability to get ready in preseason. He talked about the Cobham experience being what preseason really was, and what happens when they get back to London, when they get back to Cobham to train again as a team and get ready for the season. But it definitely feels like there are more questions, and it doesn't feel like we've defined a level of comfort playing this way yet.
I mean, I think two thoughts on Maresca's comments from the other day is like, one, it's a real tough thing for fans who are paying between $100 and $250 to go to these matches that you stated you don't really care about. That's a tough thing to hear. And there are a lot of Chelsea fans who have now gone on 3 straight summer tours, or been to multiple summer tours in the past, who had a team, I think, show a little bit more energy during these matches. And that's just something to say out loud. I think the other thing is, okay, cool, you're going to throw away 2 weeks of preseason because you're not a fan of the travel schedule or the pitches or whatever. And some of that stuff is totally understandable. The 18th of August is coming up real quick. You got, by the time they get home tonight, and they're flying out right after, from what we understand, unless there are travel delays caused by the hurricane, they are going to get home on the 7th of August. We'll probably have a day off or 2 days off. And then it is straight into Sunday's match against Inter Milan at the Bridge. And then there is a full week of prep before Manchester City. And I mean, be real. This team has not shown anywhere near enough quality to be ready for Manchester City on the 18th of August. In fact, I think by the match that I missed on Saturday, as you guys took over for me, we're nowhere near that level. So, it's fine to voice your concerns about the preseason schedule and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to hold you for that. I think it's kind of not great to say out loud personally, but whatever. Brother, you have 13 days, man. Or less. You have 12 days. So good luck.
I want to talk about a couple of things, though, because I think it's very easy to get lost in like what isn't working at this moment. And I'd like to talk about...
It's a longer list. Yeah, for sure.
Look, I think there are things, and, there are people pointing out, rightfully in the comments here, Veb, with the fact that like Nkunku's healthy and that all that matters. Like, that is a very great thing. He made it through the entirety of a U.S. summer tour, to not get injured by a pitch, is coming back looking fit, looking healthy. We had a chance to see, Madueke used in a better way, shape, and form, particularly playing on the right. Like, I think we saw Lavia on the ball was really good. I think there's some opportunities for when he's off the ball that maybe there's some question marks about. So, I mean, I think there are things that I walk away from preseason saying, you know what, like, I'm not convinced fully about what's going on. And I have a lot of questions. And I think there's, one more preseason match against Inter Milan where we're going to get an opportunity to potentially see a closer to what I would imagine is that lineup should basically be the dress rehearsal for the Manchester City match. It should basically be maybe 1-2 minor tweaks away from who should be starting in that game. And I feel like there are players like Madueke, like Nkunku, who look very good and very ready to head into the start of the season. I don't necessarily know if I feel the same way about the rest of the players, but what are the positives you're taking away from preseason, even if it's a smaller list than where your questions or concerns are from?
I mean, the number one thing that we said before this preseason was just everyone stay healthy, get through it, right? And I think in these moments, it's probably a good thing to like go 30,000 feet on this thing and just look, at the bigger picture, which is last season, the season before, we came out of preseason with significant injuries that hampered our season for the entirety of it, right? And Nkunku comes back for 2 or 3 patches last year, but is nowhere near the player that he could be. He's even said in preseason, for example, he's not even 100% fit yet. Like he's still working through it after he's been out for that long. You have to remember, he had a significant injury before he got to Chelsea, right? And was working his way up to fitness then, and then has to go through that whole thing again. So the fact that him and Reece and everybody on the injury list last year seemingly has made it through the preseason in a better state, maybe outside of Nicholas Jackson, who is just carrying that ankle injury that looked pretty brutal from a couple months ago. He's kind of a worry right now because we don't have a whole lot of reinforcements there. I'm sure we'll touch on that as we get through this episode, but that's the only real positive that I took out of this, because I look at individual play. Nani on and off looked okay in moments, looked good in moments, looked pretty bad in moments. Same thing for Sterling. Same, I don't even know if good is a quality that you could talk about. Mudryk in this preseason, that was kind of tough, but like you could basically go down the list, and I'm sure we could pick, all of the players and kind of talk about their individual preseasons if we want to do that here, Dan. But like, to me, everyone's healthy. Everyone's getting back on the plane to go back to Cobham for the official preseason now. And that is better than we were last year, for sure. I mean, I remember how, we were sat here a year ago after that game in Chicago, and we're like, God, just fingers crossed that Nkunku's injury is not that bad. And then the next day it comes out, he's out for 6 months. And I remember the air just being let out of the balloon so much at that point, Brandon especially, who made such bold predictions about his season. So I'm just happy about that. I am not happy with the rest. So, no injuries. Good.
That's the only thing. The only thing you have. I think potentially, Franklin asked the question or saying that Gusto's been decent. I think he's been played in a couple of very interesting roles, playing on the left, playing in more of a kind of central mid position at times, playing on the right. Like we've had a chance to see him in a couple different areas. It felt like we're not necessarily seeing him where we think he's going to actually play, because I would imagine in the first Premier League match of the season with Reece James suspended, he will be playing in the right back role for the first 3 games of the season at minimum.
Yeah, and look, everyone knows, I think, how much we revere Malo Gusto. There were times tonight where Malo Gusto did the run down the wing thing. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that part. That was really good. He's also been okay in midfield. I would say like he struggled a lot more, in the first half than he did in the second half when he slotted into midfield and did the inverted thing. And so I'm really interested to see if Cucurella comes back and just plugs that hole right away at this point, because we've tried him and Levi over there and a minute or two of Ben Chilwell, and there hasn't been like a click yet for me. It hasn't really just gone there. And I think Cucurella might just help in the immediate term to fix that problem. But yeah, I mean, it's also odd to me, Dan, because we have Chilwell, we barely saw him. Colwill, maybe not the greatest fit for that role on the left, and Vega barely plays in preseason in the States, so we know Reece is not going to be available. That's been predetermined. Like we're going to miss him for the first 3 or 4 matches, 3. So it's odd to me that Gusto hasn't been played on the right more. Maybe it's just an effort to get Reece up to full fitness. I'm sure we'll see Gusto there on Sunday against Inter Milan, but yeah, he's looked good in patches, I would say. I think Reece today, not so much. I think Reece really struggled physically against Vinicius, and look, he's not.
To be fair,
not the only one. If you're
going to struggle against anyone in world football, I mean that is a player who's going to make it a very difficult day for any defender. And It felt like, I felt like the only time that he was getting super engaged is actually when he was having the opportunity to play one-on-one against Vinicius. Otherwise, it felt like it was very much a don't get injured experience within the game. I mean, and this is the odd thing too, right? Like you saw, I think, how intense the Real Madrid players were several times where, Madueke was like, 2-on-1, right? Like they had did really, really good job of, just being stable within their defense, maybe taking it a bit too far in some of the ways that Rudiger was tackling into our players.
Oh, I thought he was going to hurt Nkunku. I was about to lose my mind. I could not, because Nkunku kind of came up limping after that, and I was like, oh no, like not to one of our own. What are we doing here? But I will say this, Dan, your observation is right. Real Madrid play, I think, next weekend, same weekend that we do. I think their season might even start midweek in some sort of cup game. They look much more energetic and at the level than we do, right? Helps that they've played under the same manager for a number of years, helps that they're the Champions League winners, helps that they have a supreme level of talent on their team. All of those things can be true. They were far more aggressive in this game. They were far more punchy. Yes, they took it over the top a few times, which I was not fond of, frankly, but they looked like they cared. And I would argue the first, 25 minutes, where we give up a couple of the laziest goals that I've seen a team give up, we didn't look like we were mentally there at all. And that's a worry to me because 12 days.
So maybe to counter on some of it. So things that I liked that I saw in this match in terms of like the attacking movements that we saw, particularly like the ball over the top from Enzo into Madueke. Mm-hmm. Great ball delivery there. I mean, him taking the shot from outside the box didn't necessarily get in the net, but was, the right type of position in place that you want to see some of our midfielders taking a shot from. And then I think just some of the forward passes to try to cut in between defenders to create some space. Now, Sterling didn't always do the best job with it. More frequently did not do the best job of it at all. But I think there were some things that looked really positive from that attack. And if we have Nico Jackson there, who showed that he was, a much better, runner between the channels, and then also was able to, when he played on the left wing at times, was very comfortable in that space. I'm kind of excited about hey, what's the Enzo and Jackson partnership this season? How could that potentially evolve with the way that we're trying to kind of play through, kind of quickly turn around the ball? If Nkunku plays more centrally at times, how does that work? If and when the Samu deal gets done with Atleti, how does he potentially factor in? When we get Palmer back, like I said, I think there are things, at least in the attacking movements. If it wasn't Sterling and if it wasn't Mudryk, if it wasn't Gu, I think those are things where if you think about what was being put forward from an attack standpoint tonight, and you just level up who the attacker was, some of our better attackers who are not featuring this game, I think you would feel a whole lot better about what we saw this evening, because we probably would have converted one or two more of those chances.
I would say just on the passing, it was like the end of the first half. I would say the last 10, 12 minutes of the first half and the first 20 minutes of the second half. There were clear patterns of play established there. The ball was hit diagonally in patterns all the way up the field and should have, frankly, led to some more goals. You were able to carve through Real Madrid's midfield relatively easily, get the ball up to Noni, get the ball up to Sterling, get the ball up to Guiu, so on and so forth. And if not for, a really great save on Nkunku's shot and some poor choices in other areas, Chelsea could have led this game for a period of time. I'm not sure if we would have won it, but, take that for what it is. Those looked good. It was like when Chelsea got on the ball, played out of the back, and started to do the things that, I think Maresca really wants them to do. It looked good. It looked quick. It looked decisive at times. Now, that was only for roughly 30 minutes of the game, maybe a little bit more. And I think at the end, it got really, really sloppy. Some of those balls over the top don't connect. Some of the touches are pretty tired at that point. You can kind of forgive that stuff. They've been through preseason hell now for 2 weeks. And some of those things will absolutely happen, and I'm not too upset about that. But it's only been in patches that we've seen offensively it click. Defensively, we have not seen it click at all. And so I think one part of the team is starting to move in the right direction in spurts. I was really encouraged by some of the stuff that Enzo was doing in the first half in particular. Had a conversation with Chicago Dimitri on Twitter talking about where he best fits. Is that right side number 8 or left side number 8? He's now played it in both different styles, and I think has positives in different areas. Obviously, the ball to Nani, that nice little floated cross in for the well taken header goal, by the way, by Madueke. That is a thing that he can do from the left hand side, right? That little inverted cross. It's really hard to defend against. Really hard for a goalkeeper to pick up on. The right side, he's a little bit more dynamic with his range, I think, and so Maresca's going to have to gamble. Ollie Glanville said gamble, gamble, gamble all preseason, and I think that is basically what this Chelsea team is right now, is a huge gamble. Like, do players turn up? Great. Are we going to play a really great style? Great. Are we going to press the entire game and do our jobs the entire time? Great. Then it can work. If not, it falls apart.
Yeah. So I think maybe then shifting to players that maybe we have bigger question marks about where their fit is in the team, where their standing is with the club now that we're rounding out the end of preseason, right? We know that someone like Dewsbury Hall, who just came in, is going to be a contributor, is going to feature. That Enzo's going to get his opportunities. That goalkeeper, we're going to have, maybe we could start there. We've got a lot of questions about the old and new guard, as it were. So where do you want to go there? Because I think there's a couple of players that come to mind for me. I think I'm really questioning what Mudryk's future is going to look like at Chelsea at the moment. I think that you could also say the same thing with Sterling, though he's extremely hard to move off of and is probably going to be just a sub in my mind if we do get the attackers that we're looking to get with the remainder of the window. But are there other players that you're thinking about from a big question mark standpoint about the crossroads for where they are at Chelsea?
I mean, let's just go down the list. I think let's start right goalkeeper. Jorgensen with a couple of soft goals today.
Soft.
I think the second one in particular is just kind of tough to watch. He doesn't make a quick decision, and it obviously fails him immediately. Still have huge questions about him on set pieces and coming for crosses. It obviously does not seem to be his favorite thing to do. I'll just put it that way. And I think from a kicking perspective, he's been better than maybe some of the reporting was kind of around his transfer a couple weeks ago, but not dynamic for me. I think it's been fine. A lot of it's been pretty slow out of the back. It's not been huge pressure situations, but when Manchester City comes to calling in 12 days or whatever, that's going to be a whole different deal, right? And so it'd be really interesting to see where he is. Sanchez, though, Dan, I mean, on the other side, I don't know if you want to take Sanchez, came up big in a couple of moments in preseason, had a couple of horrific errors in preseason. I mean, this is the same story.
He's going to start the first week of the Premier League season. I just think that there's not. Yeah. It would be very concerning to me from not necessarily saying that he's the better goalkeeper, or will be the better goalkeeper 6 months into the season, at the very end of the season. That is still a very open question. But I would imagine with your first match as a Premier League manager with Chelsea, playing Manchester City, that you were just going to go to the guy who has actual Premier League starts, whether or not he is the better overall option. Because I just think that is going to be the safer play, not necessarily the better play, but I think is maybe the safer play, even if he is not necessarily as good passing out of the back or kind of with, passing to the defenders. And then that creates this whole domino effect of, well, if your goalkeeper isn't in comfort, your defenders are not going to be in comfort. And I think across the board, I would say like the defensive group as a whole was in really, really bad shape. I almost wonder, can we invite Thiago Silva back for a season? Like, is that an option? Can we just get on the phone, get on Twitter, get on Instagram?
You know who's going to be grinning when they come back to Cobham is Trev Chalobah. Because, boy, if I were Trev and I watched the preseason from any of the center backs, and I mean any of them, I would be in Maresca's office, I should say, first day back, and I'd be like, hey, boss, why don't I give old Trev a run out here? Perhaps I can complete some passes and not be silly in defense. I'll say this, like the center back crew failed. It's a failed experiment right now. Batty Shield, bad preseason. Levi Colwill, pretty bad preseason. Tosin,
better. He looked really sharp in the center back when we were kind of in that back three role. I think that was where he looked that was best better and most comfortable.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't love him playing like as effectively what becomes a left center back when we're kind of playing with the the left back, the true left back is tucking in and advancing forward and basically becoming a midfielder, forcing you to play very far out and cover, a central position and like a left side defense position.
So, I mean, you look at Tosin Adarabioyo. Wes Fofana doesn't feature today, interestingly, right? Disasi not really available to kick a ball. I mean, this is not really a great show of strength, I would say, from a preseason perspective at center back. And it does make you wonder what the solution is, because I think there's been a lot of talk, and I listened to the pod, obviously, that more three at the back look seemed more comfortable for a period. Again, you're taking small doses here or there of like what looks good in defense, but it looked a little bit better, at least a little bit better between the three communicating than this, like the oblong rotation. But I'm open to it, but none of them have escaped without mistakes. And I think then that takes us to the fullback stand. I mean, you've seen Reece James, you've seen Malo Gusto, you've seen Levi Colwill kind of in that left back for the first game and a half, but like there have been mistakes there too.
Yeah, I wonder for them, because I don't feel like we have concerns about Reece James on the day.
Not their quality.
Fitness, not their quality. I think the same thing. Malo Gusto, we got the comment from Maresca that it was an experiment, right, to play him on the left-hand side because we don't have Cucurella. And so like there's questions about how much experimentation you want to do. And maybe this is just a fitness exercise to get ready. I don't have questions about either of those players. I just maybe think about the implementation of those players and what they were being asked to do and whether or not they can do that tucked in, midfield role where they're also then responsible for defense. Because I think you found a lot of really interesting opportunities in this match, right, where we play over the top and the defender, whether it was Reece James or whether it was Malo Gusto or whether it was Levi Colwill, got caught in this. Do I pass it back to my goalkeeper or do I try to kind of do the quick turn and play it forward? And it doesn't feel like there's a good understanding of like, what should I be doing in this scenario? Like, should I be trusting myself or should I be trusting my keeper or should I be trusting the other person around me? And like, that should come over time, right? Like that should improve, hopefully extremely rapidly over the next, 1 to 2 weeks to make sure that we understand what players need to be doing. But I think that the fact that we still look like we are going to be prone to a defensive error or defensive gaffe, which was one of the most maddening things we saw in the entirety of last season, where we saw wins become draws and draws become losses because we gifted the opposition a goal. And like, look, improvement match over match, we didn't concede 2 goals in the first 5 minutes, but at the same point in time, we still conceded 2 goals that you would argue we should have done better absolutely on one, if not doing better on both of them. And so like, there's, I think, a lot of opportunity for improvement on how we use the fullbacks, not necessarily on the quality of fullbacks that we have.
Yeah, and I would just say as the unit, right? Goalkeeper, center backs, fullbacks, and whatever order you want to put these in. The communication is bad and the reactions are slow. And that is a disaster in the Premier League. You are going to get eaten alive in the Premier League because of the physicality and talent that exists in the league. It is simply a great league. It is really difficult to make up for mistakes in the Premier League because everyone is so quick and there's so much quality in the final third. And so I'd shudder to think, if some of these mistakes happen like we saw on Saturday or like we saw today, how we don't start off the season down 2-0 in the first half. Like that's a legitimately worrying thing. And then Dan, if you move into midfield, I don't even know what to think about the midfield. I think the midfield has been such a enigma to me that you see it move okay in possession. You see some of the principles that Maresca is instilling in someone like Lavia or Caicedo or Dewsbury Hall. And then in tracking back and in defense, it becomes an amorphous blob that doesn't stop any pass that moves through it. It's essentially a sieve. I don't know what to make of the midfield.
I mean, if we're just talking about the players, I mean, I think you could argue that Enzo tonight seemingly ends his preseason on a bit more of a high. He gets an assist for the goal and, was involved and was, playing forward, was helping us kind of release a little bit quicker. And I mean, there were some weird ones at the end where he was start on the left side. It was on then the far right side of the pitch, hanging out with Madueke in defense, which was weird. I think Lavia, just being fit, being healthy to get into the season and how he looked, how comfortable he looked, particularly I think with the ball, right? It almost feels kind of closer to what I expect with Kovacic, right? Kovacic wasn't, Kovacic was good carrier of the ball. And I feel you've got someone like Lavia who seems to also be a very good carrier of the ball. I'm very questioning, can he be the furthest back individual in a midfield three? I don't get that vibe. That to me is maybe Caicedo has to do that, but then you lose out on Caicedo being able to push further forward and really compress, the distance between midfield and attack. And that was something he was doing at the back end of last season that was really, really good. And you're oh my gosh, Galaxy Brain finally figured out why did we spend so much money for Moises Caicedo at the end of the season. We knew exactly why we paid that much money for Moises Caicedo. And we only saw 60 minutes of him in preseason. So I mean, I think that with the midfield in particular, I would give, because of the late arrivals, because of some of these players not even having played 60 minutes together as a grouping, I probably am more question mark about where it's going to go. I think this match, projecting forward next Sunday against Inter Milan, that is the question mark game for me, and we should hopefully answer a little bit more there. I do think I am extremely concerned if there's an injury to Nico Jackson or to Cole Palmer this season, because I think that our attack without them is really, 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 really questionable. And that is probably the thing. Yes, I'm concerned about the defense. I would hope that they figure it out. I think we've got enough people in other teams who have played really well, have played at a high level in the Premier League. So you would figure it should work. I don't know if you have enough people with Premier League experience showing that they can be consistent back-to-back season double-digit figures for goals and assists. Or I'm not talking about double-digit, goal contribution, goals. When you look at Madueke, when you look at Mudryk, the distance between our best and who the second ones are, real big question mark.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just take the attacking group as a whole. Nkunku is the only one who really covers himself in glory in this preseason. Obviously, I think Guiu started really well and continuously showed the effort required to kind of lead the line, but without the end product necessarily. The goal against Club America was nice, but I don't think necessarily he's ready to start the Premier League season as the striker. Jackson out, Palmer not with the squad yet. That obviously makes it difficult. And Madueke huffing and puffing, but maybe not blowing the house down. I don't know if that's a fair enough assessment. I think he's done some. I think he grew in the preseason, unlike some others, but still not enough quality in the final third for me to necessarily make it all the way, and especially not enough quality in the final third if he's competing with Cole Palmer for that spot. I mean, I don't think that requires a ton of genius to make that statement. The other side is the one that I can't figure out. I mean, I think Sterling has looked bright at times and has certainly shown that he understands some of the principles, and then has made just boneheaded decisions in the final third. He struggled to pass with his left foot on easy, cutback passes to a striker or to Nkunku that was entering the area. That's a bummer because that is, I think from a play style, that's what Maresca wants. How many times have we watched a Pep Guardiola team cut back, cross you to death? I mean, that's what they do. That's what Maresca likely wants these guys to do. And he has not been able to effectively do that. Noni either on the other side has been able to make those beautiful cutbacks for easy kind of tap ins or shots. And then I honestly don't know what Mudryk's doing out there. I mean, I think this is a guy who probably feels lost. He feels so comfortable when he's in transition, has a lot of area to run into, and it obviously shows his physical gifts that he has. And then he gets into the final third and decision making, and it just kind of falls apart. And I think, Dan, for me, watching this whole preseason was really interesting because I thought for sure we would see Nkunku play a 9 at some point. Never happened. And that is concerning at the current time because Jackson is not here and Guiu's not quite ready, which is no fault of his. He just got here and is 18 years old. Like, I think we all need to pump the brakes on him a little bit. Who starts if that is the scenario against City in the 9? Is it Guiu?
No, I mean, if Nico Jackson is not playing in the intermatch, he's not starting most likely in a Premier League match against Manchester City, unless you feel like you've seen enough in training where you're like, we're going to give him 60 minutes or he's going to be a sub for 20 minutes at the back end, right? Like it doesn't feel like he is on course to be a starter in game week 1. Like that, let's just assess where we're at right now. We've not seen a single minute of him in preseason. He's been with the squad. Ergo, he's probably further behind in his recovery than we would hope he would be. So if that is the case, I think you are closer to maybe something like the Cole Palmer number 9 experience we saw, and maybe something like a Cole Palmer, Sterling, and Madueke type of situation with Nkunku
behind.
Coming in behind. Like that could be an option. That feels better-ish. I mean, I think the thing that you could see, and I know we did see a little bit of, like, we did see Nkunku centrally in City. Like we did see that for a bit. Like I don't think it worked terribly great because we also were playing down 2-0 pretty quickly. And so I think we changed a little bit, and they pressed way more than our team was comfortable playing against in that moment. And it did not give anyone a lot of opportunity to, particularly attack, to get support in and to get an opportunity to try to really go at City. I think the way that we might play them when a actual Premier League game is going down. If we're talking about the 3 wingers in Sterling, Madueke, and Mudryk, and I asked you the question, like, who, if you have to carry 2 into the season, who are the 2 that you're carrying into the season right now?
Sterling and Madueke, pretty conclusively. It probably will sound to people like I'm the biggest Mudryk hater in the world, and I'm really not. I still give the guy a ton of credit for everything that's going on in his home country and the conditions in which he came to Chelsea and all this sort of stuff. But I mean, he's now a year and a half in at Chelsea. I have not seen anything that would suggest that this is the right system for him to participate in. And I would be, if I were Chelsea, I would say scrap the 70 million you were planning to spend on Victor Osimhen and go and get Nico Williams immediately. I mean, I don't, if you're going to break the wage structure for somebody, go get the left winger that you desperately need to complete the system in the right way. You already missed out on Elise. You have this opportunity. Barcelona's not going to buy Nico Williams. That to me would make me feel better going into the season, that you have a bona fide left winger who has the technical ability and the dynamism to balance the attack out, because I think at times we get too one-sided, if that makes sense. Like, there are periods of the game where we're just going all down the right side, and it's all going through Madueke and Nkunku, and it's very channeled over there, and it gets squished, right? And it's easier to dispossess us because we're allowing more defenders to kind of come into that area. Times where it was Sterling on the left-hand side. We don't have the balance right now. We're not making crossfield passes as much, and so you put a Nico Williams out there who is a dynamic threat, or someone of his ilk, whatever. That to me is a much more interesting option than going to spend that money on Osimhen personally. But neither here nor there. It's probably not going to happen. I would take Madueke and Sterling and just hope for the best in that regard, but really hope that Cole Palmer takes that right wing spot.
Well, I'm saying beyond Cole Palmer, you're carrying, most likely, 3 to 4, right? Like you've got you'll eventually hit a logjam of minutes within the attack. Like I just, again, are beyond our first choice options in a lot of positions. And I'd say most positions, like it is a step down from where this Chelsea team has been, 10 years ago, where they were 5 years ago, into where we are now. And so like, I think that it's just a very sobering type of experience as a Chelsea supporter to look at your side and look across a lot of positions and say, how many of our players are best in the Premier League or top 3 in their position in the Premier League? And it's not many. I mean, you could argue for Cole Palmer without question. You could argue for Nico Jackson with how he played and finished last season. And
top
again,
3 in the Premier League.
I'm just saying, based upon
I love Nico, but I don't think yet
you can make an argument for him. I would say, like, but you beyond that, are there other players in this squad that if you said, hey, top 3, top 4 in the Premier League in their position, any of our defenders?
That's it.
Gusto?
Not yet. I love Gusto. I think he's probably in that like 6-ish category, like 7, 6, like on his way up.
3 to 4 of the 11 players in our team. And this is the outcome.
I think.
And again, you could say 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm saying like pre-Clear Lake and post-Clear Lake, because like I think that is like a defining line for a lot of people right now. Like we were probably closer to like hey, we have maybe 5 players or 6 players that we could defend. Like, so we had gone down over time, right? Like there was a slow decline in having the best set of players in the Premier League. And we are much further away from that today than we were 3 years ago, than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 years ago. And that is probably the most concerning thing, because we are all in. Our chips are in the center of the table for this strategy to pay off this season. The most important thing at this point is going to be winning, because winning cures a lot of problems. Concerns with the ownership group, concerns with the sporting director, concerns with players who are being sold. A lot of those concerns will be distant effing memories if we go out and win a lot of stuff this season. If we win the Conference League, if we win a domestic cup, if we're top 4 in the league, we're going to be feeling really, really good about this at the end of the season. But if we don't, there is going to be a lot of consternation and a lot of outcry from supporters, and rightfully so, because we have not fulfilled, or the commitment has not been filled to go out and put the best product on the pitch?
You know, we have our, you know, I think peek behind the curtain for everyone who's live and for those who are listening to this as a podcast. You guys know we do a bunch of, you know, preseason content, some predictions and some fun, you know, stuff. And I've been kind of in my head, kind of pre-planning for those podcasts as we get past the Inter Milan match and into the full match week 1 sort of run up. And I've been thinking about the question of where Chelsea are by Christmas.
Ooh, okay.
And
sneak peek.
And I think I have 2 theories of the case. One of them is going to make you cry, and the other one's serviceable. But in neither, in all of my thinking, I've started looking at the matches. I've started looking, you know, at the way that we've been playing in preseason, you know, injuries, all the stuff that would kind of make up the rationale for those predictions. I think our best case scenario is we're somewhere in 8th. And I think the worst case scenario is we're probably somewhere in 14th or 15th place. I can see it varying that much. And the reason I say that is not to be a doomsayer or whatever. That's not the point of this. The point is to say, if this team does not pick it up quickly, the Premier League is so unforgiving. The bad teams, the teams that just came up from the championship, are going to challenge us if they don't get it together quickly. And just the way that the Premier League works is it is a math problem. Guys, it's a math problem. If you lose early, you have to go make up those points. And you have to go on a bigger and bigger and bigger run. You have to beat teams in the top 4 if you don't beat the teams in the bottom 3, all that sort of stuff. I really, really hope that we get it together quickly, because sure, you lose the City. I think that's pretty well expected. I don't expect much from that first game, and I'm frankly willing to see past that first game as a thought exercise, because when Pep Guardiola starts complimenting you, you know it's about to be on, and that's not really where you want to live. But then you get into the second, third, fourth game, you know, you get into some of these, you know, you wait for Conference League matches. You have only 2 of those to start, right, before you move on. It needs to, by the end of August, early September, we need to be competent. And that is not that long from August 6th as we're recording this, Dan. So just a thought exercise.
Yeah, you have in the league Wolves away, Palace at home, Bournemouth away, West Ham away, Brighton at home as your matches between now and the end of September. So, I mean, realistically, you would want to win every single one of those and seed potentially a result in the City match. If you're saying we're not necessarily ready. I mean, we did not get a most favorable draw when it comes to Conference League. So, I mean, that also is something to kind of take into consideration too, because you'll have a game on the 22nd, and then 3 days later, you'll turn around and have a game on the 25th. 4 days later, you'll have a game on the 29th, and then you'll flip to the 1st of September and you'll have a game again. So like that, we're seeing already very tight window to start the season, a lot of quick turn that's going to be required, and the team is going to have to get up to speed extremely quickly. I mean, I think the only other positive I would say about our initial run, you mean you don't play Liverpool until the 19th of October. You're not playing Newcastle to the 27th. You're not playing United till the 2nd. And that is a kind of murderous row of matches to go through, but you do get a little bit of breathing room after the City game to say, no, we will have an opportunity against beatable. And I'm saying that in the lightest sense of the word, because this is calamity Chelsea at the moment and nothing is guaranteed, but the teams that you would expect a team of Chelsea's historic caliber to go out and beat, you should go put on a run. And I think at the high end, you might be closer to like a 3rd or 4th position if you can get that run going strong at the beginning and build some momentum. I would say this team is still would not be below 10th, because I think that it's just so tight now. We saw how tight it was the entirety of last season between 10th and 5th.
Dan, here's why I'm concerned. Wolves, Lopetegui's second year, or sorry, yes, Lopetegui's right. Wolves, they were good, right? He's obviously, I think he's now at West Ham. No, who went to West Ham? I don't remember who went to West Ham. They have a new manager. West Ham have a new
David
manager.
Moyes.
Correct. Palace closed the season really well. Now, obviously, they're missing a major piece in Elise, but
no Elise, they're going to lose.
They're likely
like there's
they'll lose.
That's a significant downgrade.
They'll lose pieces, no doubt. But I don't think that's a cakewalk. Wolves gave us a lot of problems last year. Bournemouth, way overachieved last year for my money. They might lose Solanke to Wolves, or it's not to Wolves, to Spurs. So that's interesting. West Ham always give us hell away. West Ham away is just a crazy thing now. Lopetegui is at West Ham. Thank you, Kadar. And Brighton have a new manager as well, right? So you could see opportunity, or you could see a very interesting run of fixtures that is not at all straightforward. And I think Chelsea of old would look at that and go, oh, if we don't start the season with at least 5 out of 6, that's a failure. I'd be happy if we had 2 or 3 out of 6 at the way that we're looking right now. Then you get into Forest. I'll throw Forest in there as another one. Liverpool, Newcastle, United, Arsenal. Then you have Leicester sandwiched between Villa and Southampton, Tottenham. Like, our run October, November is going to be tough. So when I say look ahead to Christmas, we have basically 2 months of pretty hard fixtures, and that's not counting the Conference League, and a looming Carabao Cup as well. That's going to be thrown in there. So it's just you gotta make moves really quick now. Like the margin for error is small. Again, not being a doomsayer, not saying it won't happen or this team won't click or they won't figure it out. Who knows? You pull off a surprise result against City, and the whole season could turn positive very quickly, right?
Yeah.
But it's not as straightforward. That first half schedule is not as straightforward as people are making it out to be. And I think come October, if you don't have some points, oof.
As Franklin points out in the YouTube comments,
I'm sorry.
Stop with the fixture list. They need a good night's sleep.
It's my brain. It's what I do.
You're potentially giving them Nick's nightmare fuel at the moment, and we're just gonna cancel that part of the podcast. So we have one last preseason match left. It's a game against Inter Milan. It's Enzo Maresca's first match of any way, shape, or form at Stamford Bridge in front of home supporters. We've already talked about the issue with the pricing of the tickets and the loyalty point situation, so we're not going to dive into that one. What's the one thing that, if you were to see it in that match, that would give you more confidence heading into the season? Not necessarily that we are going to go and absolutely, blow past City in the game week 1, but to be more competitive, to be more ready to start the Premier League campaign. Is there one thing Maresca and the team could do to give you more confidence?
I want to see the defensive 3 and/or 4, however it is structured, move together and talk to each other. There needs to be more awareness of what is going on around them and the midfield. And if I see that unit tighten up a little bit and show some awareness and show some guile and show a willingness to go throw in a tackle, and again, I know it's preseason, but if this were the NFL, you'd be playing with pads on. So it's time now. We're not doing flag football here. I think this is a real moment for the defense to show a little bit of ability to gel. I'll be really interested to see if Cucurella gets any minutes in this game in particular, because I don't think it does you a whole hell of a lot of good to play Reece James on Sunday when he's not going to be around for a couple of matches. So I think you need to see Gusto, and then I don't know who really fills in on the left if that's the plan. So that is the one thing. I think the other parts you can work on. I'd love to see us finish goals more and do all those sorts of things. But if I see that unit move together, work together, that's going to give me a little bit of hope.
I think the one thing I want to see is a high level of intensity and commitment. I think one thing, and some of this might be related to just the crazy travel schedule. Some of this might be related to the quality of the pitches that the players were playing on. Again, lots of complaints from players and managers and even spectators looking at some of the pitches across the U.S. summer tour, not just for Chelsea, but other teams. I want to see a level of intensity that shows we're ready to, we're Premier League fit ready. Like that we are not going to be half a step behind heading into the match against Manchester City, half step behind heading into that match against Wolves. Like I want to see that level of commitment and intensity when we kind of go into press, when we go into tackles, when we go into challenges. It's all fine and dandy to say, you know what, we're going to wash our hands away from the fact that these first 5 games were dress rehearsal, right? And this is the final night before production goes live. So like I would like to see just a little bit more of that to build comfort heading into the season. Because I think to the point you made, a lot of things are addressable through coaching. And that's going to be a lot of responsibility for Enzo Maresca in his first Premier League season here. But at the same point in time, it's also incumbent upon the players to show up, to be ready, to be fit, and to execute to the best of their ability what they're being asked to do. And so that would bring me more comfort heading into this season. But look, we did almost a full hour on a Tuesday night to close out this preseason, this third preseason in a row that Chelsea have been to the U.S. And Nick, it was a preseason, that's for sure.
Well, it happened, Dan, and that's that's really where we're at this point. Again, sorry for missing names earlier of coaches. Producer Jake has done well to correct me that Gary O'Neill is at Wolves, Lopetegui is at West Ham, and Herzler is at Brighton now, on with Glasner at Palace. So for those who are yelling at me, yes, I screwed that up, but we got it right at the end. Very excited to have this part done. I think the players will feel better when they're at home and able to sleep in their own beds and see their families and do all those sorts of things. Training camp is just tough. If you've ever played sports at any level and gone through training camp, it's just you're playing a lot against each other, and it can be frustrating. And the drilling and the running and all that sort of like conditioning stuff.
I mean, look, now, I've watched seasons of Hard Knocks. It looks tough.
Yep, it's I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know a thing about that personally, but I hope creature comforts of home make this team kind of settle in a little bit. Use Sunday effectively, right? Yeah. You're playing a good team in Inter Milan. They won Scudetto by a bajillion points or something last year, so it's a really good test. City, Real Madrid, Milan to enter Inter Milan, I should say, to enter your season and really get drilled, because I just shudder to think what the atmosphere will be like if you're down 3-0 against City in the opening 25 minutes of the season. I pray that that's not the case.
Well, if you joined us live on YouTube, we really appreciate it. If you didn't, you can always subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notified so you never miss when we go live. But let us know in the comments after the fact, how are you feeling? What's the one thing that Chelsea could do in that match against Inter Milan to give you more confidence heading into the Premier League season? But that is going to close it out for the U.S. Summer Tour 2024, heading in the 2024-25 Premier League season. We're going to be with you all the way through it, through the ups and downs, the twists and turns, and everything in between. And hopefully Chelsea returning to winning silverware once more. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.